Welcome back to Knowledge is Kings, guys. I am Kings, and today we're continuing our build on the Workbench, and let's dive right into it. So this bench is seemingly unlevel right now, but the concrete in my shop is horribly done. They have tons that sit at different levels. It's bent, it's crowned. It's basically the worst I've ever seen. I think people just added a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. So it's very unlevel. So even though my legs are the exact same length and everything's square, it still wobbles like this. So what I'm gonna do is add some adjustable feet to it. Now I got these off of some old machines that had these little feet on there, but the fourth foot was broken. So I found another machine that had one that doesn't match, but it doesn't really matter. I don't really care too much about the feet. I just need something to stop it from wobbling. But I will leave a link in the description of where you can pick these up new for like, I think 12 bucks or something like that. But to put these in the legs, we're gonna make two holes, one for this nut, and then a smaller one for the bolt itself. Now to find how big of a hole I need to make, I use my caliper and measure the largest diameter of the nut. And if you don't have one of these calipers in your shop, definitely grab one. This is a tool that gets used almost on every single project, sizing bolts, drills, drill bits, whatever. This is something that every person needs to have in the workshop. So once I have the measurement for the nut, then I just have to measure the bolt itself. And I want to find a bit that is larger than both of those. I don't want it to be a super tight fit. Actually, if I could get one that was the exact fit for the nut, I would do that, but I don't have this size. But to do this, I'm going to use a spade bit or a paddle bit, as some people call them, for the bolt, because I need it to drill all the way in and I don't need it to look pretty or be flat bottomed or anything. But for the nut, I'm going to be using a Forstner bit because I wanted to get it as flat as possible. And this bit, as it spins, will pull itself in, whereas I don't want that for this one. I just want to drill and get it to the right depth just by hand, by eye, and this bit will allow me to do that. It might be a little tough drilling through the end green on the bottom of the leg. That's always a little tougher. But let's do it now. So I have the bench lifted up with the forklift, so I won't have to turn it over again because it's so heavy. And for the first hole that I'm gonna drill, as you always wanna do, you wanna drill with your biggest piece first. If I drill with the long, small one first, when I try to drill with the big one, it's gonna be pivoting all around. It's gonna start spinning and catch and go like this, and it won't give me a straight hole. If I drill with this, my small one can fit in the center, still using the same point that this has, and go straight up. So always start with the biggest one first. And before I start drilling, I want to see what depth I want to drill this to. And if I hold the piece right up to the nut, it looks like if I just go right to this back side, that will be the perfect depth for this bit. And for this next one, I just need to drill basically this bit all the way in. Now I just want to make sure that with the nut on, it still fits in there. Then I can drill out all the other ones and then glue these in. Perfect. Now I don't think that this is going to fit all the way in there, so I'm probably going to have to cut this down with the grinder. Oh, so close. Yeah, I'll probably just take an inch off with the grinder. So before I cut this off, I actually want to have the nut on there first, because sometimes when you cut with the grinder on the end and then try to get the nut on, it's really hard. now that I got it cut down, I put the bolt all the way to the bottom just to make sure it can fit in fully. And I don't know if you can tell, but I must have drilled that hole at a slight angle because it's not going in perpendicular, but that's okay because this foot is on a ball so it can pivot. So it kind of helps out with not drilling straight. And like I said, I'll leave a link in the description to ones that are very similar to this. They have that little kind of self-leveling foot there. But this way, once I glue this in, I can bring this side up a lot if I need to. I mean, the floor isn't that bad, but yeah, now that this fits, I'm gonna drill all of them out and then I'll glue these in. Okay, so I have all the holes drilled, and as you can see, I had to turn it over because I couldn't figure out how I was gonna glue it upside down, which works out well anyway because that's how I put the clamp in, the vise. But to glue these in, I'm just going to use this syringe, which I've filled with UV cured resin, which is why I have the black tape on it, because the light in here will slowly cure this. So what I'm going to do, I have a couple of notches that I cut in there, and I don't know if they're actually going to do anything, but I'm hoping the epoxy will kind of go in there and hold it. Now, the epoxy is not going to be holding the weight of anything. It's just merely to keep this nut in place, because when the pressure is applied to this, the weight is going to be held by the leg and the nut. So I'm just going to start putting this in the cracks and curing it with some UV. The foot was having a hard time coming out because when I cut this to length with the grinder, it had to kind of crush the threads, which is why I had to get the wrench to take it out. Just wanted to take it out so I could get this fully facing down at the best angle here. Should only take a few seconds for this to cure, but since I poured it so deep, I want to give the chance for the UV to make it all the way down to the bottom and cure it, because as it gets filtered by the resin, there's not as strong as UV light at the bottom, so it cures a lot slower. Did get some little air bubbles right there and there. I don't think that'll matter too much, but let's see if I can't fill some up a little bit. So the outer edges are hard. Just want to make sure the bottom is. Now obviously it resisted me reefing on it with a wrench, so it is strong. I think this will work. This will work well. I think I'm just gonna. Oh, the nut seems like it's actually sticking up a little bit, but I might try to just sand this down a little bit. As you can see, that epoxy is really hard. It sands down really hard. There we go. That's one leg done. Now I'm just gonna do the rest of them. Now the reason I'm using the flashlight first, because it's just a little easier to get it close to the bolt there. But once the bolt's set so it's not moved, I know the hole is lined up. I switched to this one after I take it out because this one is way more powerful. That's like a $20 UV light compared to a $400 one. This one, the light itself actually radiates heat on your hand with such intensity of the UV light. So this cures it a lot faster. You can see this one needs a lot more resin, since the Forstner hole was a little bit too big. It is it's incredibly hot, the curing of this much resin, UV cure resin. This is a lot to cure at once. You can kind of see it's yellowing a little bit because it's getting too warm. And there we have it. All 4 legs are done. I'm just going to screw them down, and then I'm going to lift it up on my forklift, and then we'll work on attaching the vise. I have it up on the forklift here, and if you saw my last video, I had the CNC route a little channel in here, and that is going to be for the vise. Now, as you can see, there's a bunch of drill marks in there because I couldn't get the CNC deep enough to do the whole thing. I had to do the last inch and a half by hand, because my blade on the CNC doesn't go that deep. But 2 things. 1, I don't want the one part of the vise visible through the top. So I stopped a 1/4 of an inch shy from the top side. So that means when I set this in there, this part will also be a 1/4 inch shy, but that's okay because I'm going to add a piece of wood on this other side that'll go flush to the top of this. So that doesn't really matter. But what does matter is when I drop this in, what I have here is a large gap because now it doesn't go down far enough for this plate to contact the bottom of the table. So what I need to do is cut a piece this thickness to go under this, and then we can bolt this in. Okay, so I'm here at the table saw, and I'm just going to use a scrap piece here to cut the block that I need. So I'm bringing my block over to the bandsaw to resaw it in half here because I only need a little bit, and I don't want to plane this all the way down, just make all of this junk. If I split in half, I'll have a piece left over that I might be able to use someday. I probably will never use it, but I'm going to tell myself that I will at some point. And once it's sent through the planer, now I have the appropriate thickness, and the 2 faces are parallel with each other. Now we just got to cross cut it to length with the miter saw. Now that I have this block made, I just made a center mark on each one. And I'm just going to kind of line it up with this edge, keeping it back just a little bit. And this is where I'm going to attach it. And I'm just going to tip it up and put some... that worked well. All right, we'll put the glue on here. Don't really need a lot on here. I don't need to really spread it around because the screws that go through the vise will hold it on. Now I can just drop the vise in and then screw it down. So apparently the vise doesn't come with any hardware for screwing it down, so just searching my shop, I have these really long 3.5 inch screws that I'm going to use, and the head would probably work in there, but it won't work in there, so I'm just going to put these little washers on it and drill these in. Now that this is on, we can flip the table over. Actually, before I do that, I just want to show you kind of how this works. If I loosen this up, so right now you can't move it back and forth. I can just push this, and let it go, and then you can just use it like a normal vise. If I got something smaller, just put it in, use it like a normal vise. Just a really nice feature. So if you're looking for a vise to put on, make sure you get one with this because it just saves so much time, especially if you have something really thick and you're way out here and your vise is already here. It takes forever to wrap that thing around. There it is. So here I was talking about the top of the vise is shy from the top of this by a lot. So what I'm going to do, hey, I found a use for this. I'm going to take the scrap piece that we cut off that other one, and I'm going to plane it down so it's smooth. I'm going to put it in here, and then I'm just going to mark the top, cut it off, and it'll be the same height as this, and then I'll just screw it in. Now that I have the wood mounted to the vise itself is done. But now it has this little stop that can pull up. And then I can set a bench dog in here, and material can be pinched between the bench dog and this stop. So what I need to do is drill a bunch of locations for the bench dog to be able to fit in. So it looks like, checking this with the yardstick here, it is a little high. So I'm just going to knock down that edge a little bit. Oops, it's a little deep. That was set a little deep. That's a little better. So I have marks made every 3 inches following the center of this pin. I'm going to drill these out with just this sort of portable drill press. Nothing fancy, just holds the bit and my drill can ride up and down on these rails. Just helps me keep the bit square with the table. So that fits pretty well. I just need to adjust the stop on my drill here to be a little bit deeper. Perfect. Now I just got to drill the rest of them. Now that these are all drilled, I want to round the corners over just like I did in the last video for all the holes I drilled. Now that we have these holes drilled, I want to show you kind of how you would use them. So they line up with this, and let's say we put a peg in there, and we want to do maybe sand this down and put a profile on it. Now this is a really small board, but it can be whatever size board you would need. You just bring the clamp in here, clamp it into place. Allows you to do work on it without moving. Sand it. Plane it. I mean, whatever you would need to do to this board, you can do it. Now, I don't do a lot of hand planing. You know, this is basically the only plane I ever use, and it's just normally to knock a little bump off or hit a little corner, ease it over just slightly. But this is what you can do with this. You could also flip a board the other way. Now, this board would be too small to flip between here and here. So what you can do, you can set this here, and you can get a little clamp that fits right here. And you just take this and tighten that down. Now you have one that's secure without even using the vise. You can just put it in the bench dogs, and you can also get 2 come from both sides. Now these bench dogs also have rubber on the top like a cookie would. So if you had a bunch of holes drilled out, you can set your wood on top of there and sand it without it moving around. Let's just move this down because it sticks to there, and also your material won't get damaged because these are rubber. Now I don't think I'm going to drill any more holes in this, I will probably drill them as I need them. A lot of tops that I've seen have holes just like this, every 3 inches going all the way down the whole piece. I don't need that many holes, and I don't like having the holes where stuff can get dropped in there, and I don't want to drill the holes all the way through because I'm eventually going to be putting shelving and drawers under here. Now I want to bring you around to the side and show you the other bench dog holder. So here we have the holder that moves that can hold these. Now typically when you're using this, you'd have ones that are longer that stick out more so your material can't drop off, but I'll show you. So I'll just move it over to about where I think I need it. Let's say I grab a board like this, open this. See why I think you should have longer one? And now I can clamp that in, and this side is still supported. So now if you needed to do some edge work on here or anything, now it's supported. You don't have to worry about it falling on the floor, because this wouldn't be enough just to clamp it when you're working way out here, it would just fall down. Now with this, it doesn't have to. You could also use this to hold your material right here and help you put shelves on. But basically that's what purpose this serves. Now I don't know if I'll be using that a lot, but I've seen a lot of tables, almost all of them have something very similar to this. So I thought I'll put it in here and I'll eventually use it. Okay, now that you know how the bench dogs work, the last thing we're going to do is to put on some casters that'll help us move this around. Now this is up really high, and because I actually put a level on here to level it, over on that side they're actually a lot higher. But even still, these wheels actually do a great job of giving you a lot of height. So what I'm going to do is put this bracket on, and then this wheel will slide in here, and you put this pin to lock it on so that you can move it around whenever you want to. And then when you're not moving it, if you want, you can take the wheels off so they're not getting in your way of kicking them. So I'm just going to center these holes on there. Now they only give you 2 holes, and I have these number 12 screws that I'm hoping will be enough to hold once all 4. I mean, this thing is very heavy, but the screws are really thick and the wood is really hard. So I'm hoping that will hold. So it just lifts it off a little bit. I might actually want to, because I think this is all the way in. It feels like it's all the way in. I might want to move this down just a little bit. It's still up, but not very much. I think I might move this down a little. Okay, I think that'll work. We'll put it that same height on all of them. So this moves around surprisingly easily for something this heavy. So I'm really happy the wheels actually worked out. Now with the variations in my concrete, I will have to put my leveling feet all the way up in order to make it over some of those, because the one that's down the most only clears the ground by like 3/8 of an inch, and that's not big enough for a lot of the variation in the concrete in here. But I am really happy with how this turned out. All I have left is just to sand the top up a little bit, and I think this thing is done. I don't plan on putting any finish on it. This is going to be used and abused in the workshop, and I don't want to have to worry about trying to refinish anything or try to make it look pretty or anything like that. In the future, at some point, I will be putting some drawers and storage under the bottom to better utilize this little mobile storage area. But for now, I think this turned out great. And like I said, I will probably drill more holes in the future as I need them. I get a panel on here, I'm like, boy, it'd be nice to clamp this down. I might drill some. This drill thing made by Miles Craft is really not that great. It is very sticky, and I think So this is with lubricant on it, and it has a pretty strong string here. And I think the problem is they only have a spring on one side. Let's see if I push up just on this one side, it shoots up. This spring constantly keeps it at a tipped angle, so it really locks it into places. And that's with spray lubricant all over this thing to help it ride smoothly. It just doesn't work that well. This is the only one I've ever had, so I'm not sure if there are other ones out there that are better, but this Miles Craft one, not that great. But I think I'll just clear this off so you can get some little glamour shots and call this one done. I will say this project was actually pretty tough given all the mortise and tenon joints and the fact that it was just so extremely heavy. But the heft of this means there is absolutely zero shake in this, which is exactly what I wanted in a workbench. The one I've been using, which is the same as the outfeed on my table saw, is just some 2x4 slapped together with some melamine on top, and it is just shaky as you can be, and it's not real flat. It had 1/2-inch MDF on top, so this is a major upgrade, and I'm looking forward to getting years and years of use out of this thing, being banged up and getting saw marks in it, and just letting it stand the test of time. And maybe I can even give this to my grandkids one day and say, hey, this is made by your grandpa, and here it is. Not that I have any grandkids, and hopefully won't for a little while. That's my oldest is only 16. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching. If you have any questions about this project or any project, feel free to leave it down in the comments. And we will see you in the next one.
Oh, I like that.